My name is Leah Jameson, and what I'm about to share with you changed everything I believed about life, death, and what awaits us beyond. This is not some made-up story or something I read in a book. This is what happened to me on December 3rd, 2021, when for 12 minutes and 45 seconds, my heart stopped beating and my soul left my body. I never thought I'd be the one to experience something like this. Growing up in a small town outside of Cleveland, Ohio, I had what most would call a difficult childhood. My mother died when I was just 7 years old, leaving me with my stepfather, Richard. What the neighbors saw was a hard-working man raising his stepdaughter alone. What they didn't see were the locked doors, the bruises I learned to hide, and later the needles. The first time Richard injected me with heroin, I was 14. "It'll take the pain away," he said. And God forgive me, it did, at least temporarily. The next 6 years became a blur of abuse and addiction. By the time I was 20, I was completely under his control, both physically and chemically. I had tried to escape twice. The first time, I made it 3 states away before the withdrawals hit so hard I couldn't function. The second time, Richard found me at a shelter in Cincinnati and dragged me back. After that, I stopped trying. I believed there was no way out. On that December night, Richard and his friends were celebrating something. I don't even remember what. The house was filled with smoke, loud music, and people I barely knew. I had been clean for 2 days, not by choice, but because Richard had been withholding to punish me for something I supposedly did wrong. I was sick, shaking, desperate. When he finally handed me that needle, I didn't even hesitate. I didn't measure. I didn't think. I just wanted the pain to stop. I remember the rush hitting me harder than ever before. I remember my vision tunneling, my legs giving out. I remember Richard's annoyed face as I collapsed onto the dirty carpet. Someone laughed. Someone else cursed. And then nothing. But nothing isn't quite right, because what happened next was more real than anything I've ever experienced in this life. The first thing I noticed was the sudden silence, the pounding music, the voices, all gone in an instant. I felt strangely light, like gravity had loosened its hold on me. When I opened my eyes, I was looking down at myself. My body lay sprawled on the floor, my limbs at awkward angles, my face a sickening bluish gray. Richard was slapping my cheeks, not out of concern but annoyance. "Leah, you stupid girl, wake up," he hissed. Someone else was backing away, saying they didn't want any part of this. Another person was gathering their things, preparing to leave. No one was calling for help. I felt no attachment to the body below me. It was like looking at a stranger or a discarded piece of clothing. I should have been terrified to see myself like that, but instead, I felt a profound sense of relief. The pain was gone, the hunger, the shame, all gone. I tried to speak, to tell them I was okay, but no sound came out. I reached toward Richard, but my hand, or what I perceived as my hand, passed right through his shoulder. That's when I understood. I was no longer part of their world. As this realization washed over me, the room began to dim around the edges of my vision. The people below seemed to move in slow motion, their actions becoming less distinct, less important. A soft humming sound filled my awareness, growing louder until it became a rushing wind. I felt myself being pulled backward, away from the scene below. Not roughly, but firmly, like being carried by a current. The room, my body, Richard, they all receded, growing smaller and darker until they vanished completely. For a moment, I was suspended in darkness. Not a frightening darkness, but a transitional one, like the space between dreaming and waking. In this darkness, I became aware of presences around me, indistinct at first, then gaining form and substance. They were luminous beings, radiating light from within. As they drew closer, I could make out features that resembled humans, but perfected, without flaw or blemish. Their eyes held wisdom beyond anything I'd ever encountered. One of them approached me directly. I somehow knew her name was Grace, though no introductions were made. Her light was gentle, calming. "Leah," she said, her voice resonating not through my ears but within my consciousness. "Your time was not meant to be now." "Am I dead?" I asked, though no words formed from my lips. Thoughts simply transferred between us. "Your body has ceased functioning," Grace explained, "but the final crossing has not been determined." Another being, whom I perceived as male and whose name seemed to be Michael, moved closer. His light was more intense, almost martial in its brilliance. "You must see," he said. "You must understand what hangs in the balance." As he spoke, I felt myself being moved again, this time with greater purpose. The darkness around us shifted, parted like a curtain, and revealed a landscape unlike anything in earthly experience. We were traveling, not by moving through space as we understand it, but by shifting from one reality to another. Past scenes from my life appeared and dissolved around us. My mother reading to me as a child, the day of her funeral, the first time Richard hurt me, moments of small kindnesses from strangers, opportunities for different choices I had missed or ignored. "Your life thread," Grace explained. "Every moment connected, every choice echoing forward and backward through time." I watched my own history unfold and felt the weight of it, not with judgment, but with perfect understanding of cause and effect, action and consequence. I saw how circumstances had shaped me, but also how my responses had shaped my path. "There is more you must see," Michael said. The scenes of my life faded and we began to descend. The peaceful presence of light diminished, replaced by a growing sense of heaviness. The air, if it was air, became thick, difficult to move through. Colors dulled and sounds became muffled, as if we were moving underwater. An oppressive feeling of dread built within me. "What is this place?" I asked, instinctively drawing closer to my guides. "The outer reaches," Grace answered, her light dimming slightly, though still present. "Where souls wander, who have rejected the light." As we moved deeper, I began to see shadowy figures drifting aimlessly. Unlike the beings of light, these souls seemed incomplete, fragmented. Some appeared almost translucent, barely maintaining their form. Others were darker, more substantial, but distorted in ways that made them difficult to look at directly. What struck me most was their isolation. Even when they drifted near one another, there was no connection, no acknowledgement. Each was entirely alone in its suffering. "They are not here by divine punishment," Michael explained, sensing my horror. "They have chosen separation. Even now, they could turn toward the light." We continued our descent, the atmosphere growing heavier, the feeling of dread more intense. The wandering souls became fewer, replaced by a vast emptiness that somehow felt more threatening than anything I'd yet encountered. And then, abruptly, we stopped. Before us stretched an immense void, not merely darkness, but an absence so complete it seemed to pull at the edges of my being. At the center of this void sat a throne. Not a throne of gold or precious stones, but one that seemed forged from darkness itself, solid and substantial against the emptiness surrounding it. And upon this throne sat a figure. I couldn't see it clearly. My perception seemed to slide away each time I tried to focus, but I felt its presence like a physical weight pressing against me. Where the beings of light had radiated warmth and peace, this entity emanated cold and discord. Looking toward it was like staring into a black hole that threatened to pull me apart atom by atom. "Satan," Grace whispered, the name seeming to cause her pain. The figure on the throne turned its attention toward us. Though I could not see its face, I felt its gaze fix upon me with terrible precision. A voice spoke, not in words, but in pure intent that translated itself into my understanding. "This one is mine." The voice was beautiful and horrifying at once, musical and reasonable, yet underlaid with a dissonance that scraped against my soul. It reached inside me, finding every doubt, every fear, every moment of despair I had ever experienced, and amplified them until they threatened to overwhelm me completely. By choice and by action, she has walked my paths. Her soul bears my signature. Images flashed through my mind. Every needle I had willingly accepted, every opportunity for help I had rejected, every prayer I had left unsaid, believing no one was listening. "You have no claim on her," Michael responded, his light flaring protectively around me. "I have every claim," the entity replied, its focus intensifying until I felt stripped bare, every flaw and failure exposed. "She has lived by my principles, self above all, pleasure and pain as the only realities, despair as the final truth. I wanted to deny it, but in that place, lies were impossible. There was truth in what he said. I had given up. I had surrendered to despair. I had stopped believing in anything beyond my immediate suffering." "She has not made her final choice," Grace argued, her light steady despite the oppressive darkness. "Her life thread is not complete." "It is complete enough," came the reply. "Patterns set are rarely broken. I claim what has already chosen me." I felt myself being pulled toward the throne, toward that terrible presence, not physically dragged, but drawn by resonance, like recognizing like. Parts of me responded to its call, acknowledging the dark harmony between us. Years of hopelessness had created channels through which its influence could flow, pulling me toward it like a current. Grace and Michael stood firm, but I could feel their concern. This was not a battle they could fight for me. The choice ultimately was mine. And in that moment, facing the throne of darkness, feeling its pull, I wasn't sure I had the strength to resist. What happened next is difficult to describe in human language. From beyond the void, from beyond even the realms of light we had passed through, came a voice. Not a voice as we understand it, more like pure authority expressed as sound, pure love expressed as word. It did not speak to me or to my guides, but to the entity on the throne. "No." Just that. A single word. But in it was contained such power, such definitive reality, that everything, the void, the throne, the pulling darkness, shuddered in response. "She is not yours to claim." The darkness seemed to contract, gathering itself, challenging. "She has chosen," it insisted, but with less certainty than before. "She has suffered," the voice corrected. "She has struggled. She has fallen. But she has not fully chosen." As these words resonated through the void, I felt something happening within me. It was as if dormant areas of my being were awakening, remembering a light I had forgotten was there. Memories surfaced, my mother teaching me to pray as a child, a church youth group I had briefly attended before Richard forbade it, moments when, despite everything, I had shown kindness to others who were suffering. Times I had whispered desperate prayers into my pillow, hoping against hope that someone was listening. "I planted seeds that you cannot destroy," the voice continued, and now I recognized it. Not from human experience, but from the deepest part of my soul. This was the voice of God, not angry or condemning, but absolute and final in its authority. "You cannot have her." A scream tore through the void, a sound of such rage and frustration that it seemed to rip the very fabric of that place. The entity on the throne contorted, its form shifting between something almost human and something entirely other. The throne itself began to crack, fissures of light breaking through its dark surface. The pull I had felt toward the darkness abruptly ceased, replaced by a sensation of being lifted, supported, embraced by something infinitely greater than myself. The void and its throne receded beneath us as Grace and Michael gathered me between them, ascending rapidly toward the light. As we rose, the oppressive weight fell away completely. Colors returned, brighter than before. The air became easier to move through, filled with subtle harmonies that seemed to resonate with my very being. And all around us, the light grew stronger, welcoming us back into its embrace. We emerged into a realm so beautiful that human words fail to capture its essence. If I were to try, I would speak of colors beyond our spectrum, music beyond our octaves, joy beyond our understanding. But these approximations fall short of the reality. We stood at the edge of what appeared to be a vast city, but not of concrete and steel. This city seemed alive, responsive, each structure perfectly integrated with the land, the flowing waters, the light itself. Nothing was static. Everything pulsed with vibrant, purposeful life. And everywhere, beings of light moved and communicated, their joy palpable. This is the outskirts of what you might call heaven, Grace explained, her form more radiant than ever in this environment. The dwelling place of God with his people. I looked down at myself and noticed for the first time that I too was becoming luminous, though not with the same intensity as my guides. It was as if the light was being gradually restored to me, healing the damage of years of darkness. "Can I enter?" I asked, sudden longing filling me. Every fiber of my being yearned to move deeper into that city, to experience its fullness. Michael shook his head, though kindly. "Not yet. Your time has not come." Before I could protest, I felt a gentle but irresistible presence behind me. Turning, I found myself face to face with him. I knew instantly who he was, though he appeared as a man, not the passive, sentimental figure often depicted in religious art, but a being of such strength and authority that I instinctively fell to my knees. His eyes held the wisdom of ages, depths of understanding beyond human comprehension. Yet in those same eyes was such love, such personal knowledge of me, that I felt simultaneously exposed and accepted. Jesus. He extended his hands toward me, and I saw the scars, not ugly or painful, but transformed, radiant, essential to who he was. When he spoke, his voice resonated through my entire being, rebuilding and reordering everything it touched. Leah. Just my name, spoken with such tenderness that tears began streaming down my face. In that single word was complete knowledge of who I was. Every mistake, every wound, every hope, every possibility. "Lord," I managed to respond, the word feeling both inadequate and perfect. He smiled, and it was like watching the dawn break over the universe. "You have wandered far," he said, reaching out to lift me to my feet. "But you were never forgotten, never abandoned." "But I abandoned you," I whispered, memories of my life flooding back. "I stopped believing. I gave up." "You stopped trusting in a false image," he corrected gently. "A God who punishes without mercy, who abandons his children to suffer alone. That is not who I am." As he spoke, his hands took mine, and where our skin met, light flowed between us. I felt wounds healing that I hadn't even known were there, ancient injuries to my soul that had shaped my entire life. "You were a child," he continued, "hurt by those who should have protected you, led into darkness by those who should have guided you toward light. I have never held that against you." "Then why—" I struggled to formulate the question. "Why did you allow it? All the suffering, the abuse, the years lost to addiction." His eyes grew solemn, though the love in them never diminished. "I have given humanity free will, the freedom to choose good or evil, love or hate, construction or destruction. Without that freedom, love would be meaningless. Your stepfather chose to use his freedom to harm rather than heal. Others chose to look away rather than help. These choices have consequences that ripple through many lives." "But that doesn't seem fair," I said, surprised at my own boldness. "It is not about fairness as humans understand it," he replied. "It is about purpose that extends beyond a single lifetime, beyond what can be seen from your limited perspective. Every suffering you endured has shaped you in ways you cannot yet comprehend. Nothing, not one tear, not one moment of pain, will be wasted." He gestured toward the city behind him. "Here, all is redeemed, all is transformed. What was meant for evil becomes the foundation for greater good." Though his words were beyond my full understanding, They resonated with something deep within me. I sensed truth in them that transcended my questions. Why am I here now? I asked. Why show me this if it's not my time? Jesus released my hands and placed one of his on my heart. Because you needed to see what hangs in the balance. You needed to know what waits beyond the darkness. Images began to flow from his touch, not of the past now, but of possible futures. I saw myself, healthy and whole, reaching out to others trapped in the same cycles that had nearly destroyed me. I saw lives changed because of my testimony, my understanding, my hard-won wisdom about both darkness and light. You have a purpose, Leah, he said as the images faded. A reason for returning that goes beyond your own healing. I'm afraid, I admitted. I don't know if I'm strong enough. You won't be alone, he promised. I will be with you, even when you cannot feel my presence. The strength will be there when you need it. He stepped back slightly, his expression both loving and solemn. It is time for you to return. Panic rose within me. Please, I begged. I don't want to go back to that, to the pain, the addiction, the hopelessness. It will not be as it was, he assured me. You are returning with new eyes, a new heart. What seemed impossible before will open before you, but the choice to walk through those openings will still be yours. He reached out once more, touching my forehead. Remember. In that touch was a transfer of knowledge, not intellectual facts, but soul-deep understanding of who he was, who I was, what was possible with his help. I felt it lock into place within me, becoming part of my very being. It is time, he said again, and this time I nodded, accepting though still afraid. He smiled one last time, and the light around him intensified until I could no longer look directly at him. I will see you again, Leah, either when your work is complete or when you need reminding of this moment. You are mine, and nothing can change that. As his words faded, I felt myself being drawn backward, away from the city, away from his presence. Grace and Michael appeared beside me again, guiding my return journey. We will be watching over you, Grace assured me as the heavenly realm began to recede. You won't remember everything, Michael added. The human mind cannot contain all you've seen, but the essence will remain, available when you need it most. The transition back was faster than the journey out had been. We passed through layers of light, through remembered scenes of my life, but they looked different now, infused with new meaning, new possibility. Then came darkness again, but not the oppressive void of Satan's throne. This was simply the darkness of transition, of threshold crossing. And then suddenly, weight returned. Gravity, limitation, pain. My body convulsed violently as air rushed into vacant lungs. My heart, restarted by the paramedic kneeling over me, hammered against my ribs with painful intensity. Every nerve ending screamed as circulation returned, as consciousness reconnected with physical form. "We got her back!" someone shouted. "Pulse is stabilizing." The ceiling of my stepfather's living room came into blurry focus. Uniformed figures moved around me. An oxygen mask pressed against my face. The hard floor beneath me. The smell of vomit and sweat and medicine. "Mom, can you hear me?" A paramedic leaned into my field of vision. "You overdosed. We've given you Narcan. You're going to be okay." Going to be okay. The words seemed absurdly inadequate compared to what I had just experienced, but I managed a small nod. As they lifted me onto a stretcher, I caught sight of Richard being handcuffed and led out the front door by police officers. Our eyes met briefly, and for the first time in my memory, I felt no fear of him. No hatred either. Just a profound understanding that he too was a soul in darkness, choosing separation over and over again. The realization brought unexpected tears to my eyes. In the ambulance, as the paramedics worked to stabilize me, fragments of my experience began to fade, just as Michael had warned they would. The specific details, the exact words spoken, these slipped away like water through cupped hands. But the essence remained. The knowing. The certainty that I had been in the presence of both ultimate darkness and ultimate light, and that the light had claimed me. "You flatlined for almost 13 minutes, the paramedic told me as we pulled into the hospital emergency entrance. 12 minutes and 45 seconds to be precise. It's pretty much a miracle you don't have brain damage." I tried to smile beneath the oxygen mask. If only he knew how active my brain had been during those 12 minutes and 45 seconds, how far I had traveled, how much I had seen. The days and weeks that followed were difficult. Detox, withdrawal, the legal aftermath of what had happened in Richard's house that night. But something fundamental had changed within me. The cravings, though physically intense, no longer had the same grip on my soul. The fear and shame that had dominated my life had been replaced by something stronger: purpose. When the hospital social worker asked if I had somewhere to go after discharge, I heard myself mention a women's recovery centre I'd never even known existed. When she asked if I had any religious preference, I answered Christian without hesitation, though I hadn't set foot in a church in over a decade. Step by step, choice by choice, I began walking a new path. Not perfectly. I stumbled often, doubted sometimes, occasionally found myself longing for the oblivion that heroin had once provided. But each time darkness threatened to reclaim me, I would feel a warmth in my chest, hear an echo of that single powerful word that had shattered Satan's claim on my soul: no. Today, 3 years later, I share my testimony with anyone who will listen. I tell them about the reality of spiritual warfare that most people never see. I tell them about the darkness that waits to claim those who surrender to despair. And most importantly, I tell them about the light that reaches into that darkness, about the voice that speaks with authority over principalities and powers, about the scarred hands that heal every wound. Some believe me. Some think I hallucinated the whole thing, just my oxygen-deprived brain creating comforting illusions in my final moments. But that doesn't matter. I know what I experienced. I know who intervened for me. And I know the work I've been given to do for whatever time I have left on this earth. My name is Leah Jameson, and I came face to face with Satan, but God intervened and said, no. And in that single word was my salvation, my redemption, my purpose. In that single word was everything.